Apparently, Bill Cosby is finally going to face a trial, a criminal case over one of his alleged sexual assaults. In this particular case, prosecutors say that Cosby assaulted Andrea Constand, then the director of operations for the Temple University women's basketball team, who regarded Cosby as a mentor at that time. Constand is expected to testify at trial, which will be scheduled during a hearing in July. So we're still a long way off from it. We don't even have that hearing yet, let alone a date for when the trial will happen. But this is a breakthrough because while he has been accused of sexually assaulting literally scores of women, the vast majority of them it happened far too long ago for them to prosecute now. We've passed that point. This was a case that, though it is over a decade old itself, is still within the period where it can actually go to trial, and so we're going to have that. The Pennsylvania case, filed just before the deadline to file charges at the end of last year, is the only criminal matter that currently can proceed, with charges of aggravated indecent assault without consent, aggravated indecent assault while the victim was unconscious or unaware that penetration occurred, and aggravated indecent assault where a person impairs a complainant. So where something was being used to make it so it was difficult for the person to have consent, to stay conscious, that sort of thing. Now, there are going to be difficulties in terms of actually getting these charges to stick to him, which we'll get to in just a minute. But we've covered this story a dozen times over the past year. It is surprising that they're finally going to try to get one of these to stick to him.
Yes, and Bill Cosby, man. So first off, all the things that he did, reprehensible and literally unbelievable, because the country chose not to believe it for decades and decades.
Yeah.
It's not like it hadn't leaked in the press. It had leaked in the press. But everybody thought, no, that Bill Cosby from, the Cosby Show and all the pudding stuff, and he's such a sweet
Ghost
guy.
dad.
Yeah. And look, in the beginning, I didn't want to believe it, right? Because I grew up in the 80s. Cosby was like a dad to all of us, right? So, yeah, you feel a little betrayal, and you want to, cognitive dissonance says, nah, it's probably not true, right? So, but he's such a knucklehead. He tried to make a career comeback, put himself out in the news, and he can't help himself. He moralized, and he would look down on and speak down to other African Americans, telling them to pull their pants up, which now, looking back, is the most ironic thing anyone has ever said. If only he'd pulled his pants up, he wouldn't have been in any of this trouble, right? So, and that's the main thing he used to talk about, like, oh, have some decorum.
Yeah.
Have some decorum, because he didn't like the way you were being dressed, while he would then sexually assault people after he drugged them.
Dozens and dozens of people, apparently.
That's right. So now those are stories that have come out. Some people are still in denial. No, they think 50 different women spanning 4 decades all made it up and all had very similar stories coincidentally. Or they heard each other in the press and yada, yada. All right, whatever you want to believe, right?
Yeah.
But now we're finally going to go to court.
Exactly.
Now, it's hard to prove 10 years out, because the defense attorneys, and he will have great defense attorneys because he's rich, will come in and pick apart your memory from all
I've got
that
some
time
details
ago.
on that, actually.
Yes.
So they've already started to do that. So the defense attorney, Brian McMonigal, attempted to undermine the credibility of the alleged victim, Andrea Constad, cast doubt on the memories of others, and underscored the lack of physical evidence, which of course is lacking since it was over a decade ago. He pointed to Constand's changing recollections about dates of the encounter, portions of her initial statement to police that she was allowed to cross out and revise, and her contact with Cosby after the incident, which included requesting tickets to one of the comedian's concerts. This is a direct quote from him saying, "She met with the defendant, accepted an invitation, a dinner invitation with the defendant, spoke with him on the phone, went up and visited him in Canada at a concert, get me some tickets." And he eventually was spoken to by the judge for grandstanding because he was getting so worked up about it. And look, I think that many people, when they hear the particular cases of one of these assaults and then they hear about later contact and stuff, they naturally are confused about that. But that does not mean that there wasn't a sexual assault or multiple sexual assaults. That is the way that it happens tragically in many cases. But they are already starting to smear her, as they have smeared other women who've come forward to accuse him of these sorts of events. And by the way, I don't know if you read the actual account of what happened with her, but he had settled previously a civil complaint over the details, and so we have the details. And it talks about him offering these pills to her to help her take the edge off, of course not saying what the pills actually were. And then at some point, she passes in and out of consciousness. He gives her a fruit muffin and a cup of tea the next morning and told investigators that he liked the petting and touching.
Yeah. So
I mean, these details are already out there.
So that in that civil case, the fact that he didn't settle, it's just such hubris. And that's what they do all the time. He knows what he did. So in the depositions, he had to admit that he did drug her and he did have her pass out and he did like petting and touching, as you just said, right? That's an admission of sexual assault. And so...
and statute of limitations isn't over.
And that's already in the court papers. But he thinks like, no, I mean, yeah, you drug him a little bit and then molest him. What's the big deal? I did that for 4 decades. Yeah, that's a crime, Bill, right? And then look at his answer for whether they had intercourse. He replied, never asleep or awake.
Weird.
What does that mean?
Most people don't need to say the asleep part.
Yeah.
Because most people don't frequently have people while they're asleep.
Yeah. You only say that if you're like, no, this time, or really, trust me, I didn't even have sex with her awake or asleep when I had knocked her out.
So
right?
all these
No,
quotes,
we don't trust you, Bill. That's why you need this case.